What is going on, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving. I know if you're like me and you're here, you're playing DFS, right? You're gonna be with family, you're gonna eat some food, and you're gonna have money on the line in these games. That's just the best way to do it. And I have the breakdown for you. So I have the positions grouped. If you look at the top right, I have my keys like fade, value, injury. So let's just get into it. So quarterback, it's actually nice. The most expensive quarterback is Dak at 6,800. That's actually really good for a quarterback price, and especially on a 3-game slate. That's actually really good. Fourth best PFF pass block advantage for him. Highest total on the slate. We have all games over, I think 44, 41 is the lowest one. The Dallas Washington's at 48.5. 2,999, just 1 yard short. Yards to quarterbacks and 24 passing touchdowns allowed by Washington. That crazy numbers. Washington's defense, I mean, I don't need to try to tear them down any more than they have been, but pass defense, one of the worst. Dallas's pass offense has been really solid lately. Washington's played the run a little bit better than the pass, but overall, I still don't think it's bad. And on this slate, I think Dak stands out as the best quarterback play. Best matchup, really good price. It's not like you have to adjust your lineup for paying up $6,800 for a quarterback. I know on a main slate, that's like a perfect price for a quarterback like Dak. So Dak's, yes. Sam Howell, I have as a fade. Not a lot to go into it other than just how good Dallas's defense is, how bad Washington's offensive line is. Brock Purdy, another like on the slate, especially for his price point at 6,100. Just heavy road favorites against Seattle. In his last 3 games, 23 points is Brock Purdy's fantasy floor on DK. That's pretty good compared to his average, which is around like 18 or 19, so up 4 points. In a game like this one where it's another, I think this one is the lowest total. But still, we've seen what Seattle's offense is capable of times. We've seen San Fran's defense not fully be locked in lately. Looked good last week, but still, 6,100 Brock Purdy for one of the most efficient offenses in the league. San Fran's defense has the highest turnover percentage in the league. That means they get a lot of takeaways, so San Fran's offense sees it a lot. I do like Christian McCaffrey a lot, so it's really hard to get Brock Purdy and McCaffrey in there. But if you can, go for it, if that's the route you want to take. Geno Smith, expected to play. I don't really like him or hate him for today. It's kind of more of he's probably going to play. If not, Drew Lock at 5,000 steps in. I still think Drew Lock's a good play at his price point, but I wouldn't love it, especially if you're playing cash for today. Jordan Love, 5,500 against Detroit. This one's a good one. Top 10 PFF pass block advantage. High total, I think this one's at 48. Aaron Jones already out. A.J. Dillon questionable. Wilson on the IR. So a lot of injuries there. Lions, 16 passing touchdowns allowed. And with Detroit being heavy favorites, that means Green Bay's going to have to pass the ball a lot. Luke Musgrave's also out too, so interesting to see where that goes. But I do like Jordan Love. If you don't want to pay up for Dak, Purdy's there, but honestly, I think Jordan Love has a higher ceiling than Purdy. I think Purdy's floor is kind of safer than Love's, though. So that's it for quarterbacks. On running backs, Christian McCaffrey, only 8,700 for Christian McCaffrey. That's crazy. He's like a guaranteed 10-plus fantasy point running back. Like, a lot of games with over 20, right? But I think 14 is like his floor. That's crazy. And he's cheap. Like, there's a lot of cheap prices on this slate for some reason. He's the best fantasy running back in the league, and he's 8,700. Usually we get him around 95. I mean, we've seen him up there at 10K before, but 8,700, I think it's a cheap discount for him. Top 10 run block advantage PFF grade. 1,250 total yards and 12 total touchdowns to running backs. Seattle's allowed. League high 43 red zone carries and leads a team with a 28% red zone target share. So Christian McCaffrey, will love him, and it's easy to get to him on the slate. Another guy you don't have to break your roster down and figure out who you're not going to play on the slate. The difference, though, is 1,900 is the difference between CMC and Gibbs. But Tony Pollard, the next guy, running back I like. Just before I get into it, I do like Jahmyr Gibbs. I do. I just prefer Montgomery for the price point and kind of the matchup. But I still think Gibbs is a good tournament play. If you're playing quite a bit of tournament lines, I still think Gibbs, especially in his receiving game script role, is a very good play as well. But Tony Pollard, $100 cheaper than Gibbs. Another guy with a top 10 PFF run block advantage. 1350 plus yards to running backs and 9 total touchdowns. So a little less than CMC. But just going off of it, second in the NFL in red zone carries behind CMC. Third on the team in red zone targets. So Tony Pollard getting a lot of work. Dowdle's still questionable. Did get in the game. Deuce Vaughn's still there. So Tony Pollard, I think, one of his better fantasy games he had last week. Another good to okay matchup, right? A lot of yards. There's scenarios to where, Dallas gets the ball, in the red zone. Their return game is good too. You got to remember that. So there's a good chance Dallas gets the ball. Tony Pollard gets 1 to 2 touchdowns. That's very, very doable in this game. But yeah, for his price point, I love it. David Montgomery, 6,300 I mentioned. Top 5 PFF run block advantage. 32 red zone carries, averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Playing a Green Bay rush defense that's allowing 134.7 yards per game. So definitely want to get the running game in there for Detroit. Kenneth Walker, doubtful. Aaron Jones out. Brian Robinson and A.J. Dillon fades for me in this slate, with A.J. Dillon being questionable at that. Zach Charbonnet, I think, is the value. I think for his price, he's a good value, right? 5,300. Ken Walker, doubtful. It's expected out. Used heavy in the receiving game. We saw a lot last week. I still don't think the matchup's great, but in a game where if what Vegas is projecting Seattle to be behind, having a receiving back is never a bad thing, especially with Geno banged up. I think he had was a full participant in practice, so that's positive, but still banged up nonetheless. I think having Zach Charbonnet and his price point's really good. So that's it for running backs. There's obviously other running back plays, like as far as players that might see the field, but nothing that really stands out to me to really target in cash-ish type cash tournament. CeeDee Lamb, 8,700. I love him. Facing a defense that allows league-leading 2,100 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns to wide receivers. 14 red zone targets, and plays amazing versus man coverage. A lot to like on CeeDee Lamb. Amon-Ra is a fade for me. It's not a fade that I like. I still think Amon-Ra is going to get fantasy points. He could have an explosive game, right? But just looking at his numbers versus Green Bay, I just don't want to really pay up for Amon-Ra than I would CeeDee in this slate. Averaging just 16 DK points a game versus Green Bay, which isn't bad, but when you consider his price point, that's less than 2 times, so that's not what you want to go after. And I just like the run game for Detroit. I like Gibbs, I like Montgomery. I don't think I need to play Amon-Ra at his price point. Guys that I leave blank, by the way, it's I don't like, I don't hate. I'm not going to favor them more than the other, right? Amon-Ra, I'm going to play lower than the field. Brandon Ayuk, probably at the field, right? Guys that I like, probably more than the field. So the next one, though, DK Metcalf, 34% of the red zone targets. 49ers giving up 39.9 DK points per game to wide receivers. I think it's a good run back if you're doing San Fran. Obviously, his price point's there at 6,500. If you can afford to pay up for him, I'd go for it. Deebo Samuel, next guy, 5,900. Averages over 100 total yards a game versus Seattle. I just prefer him over Brandon Ayuk. I think Brandon Ayuk still is another guy that's going to have a good game. But for the price point, an $1,100 pay down, and to get another San Francisco guy, I think Deebo's price is really good in that matchup. I have this noted for all 3 Green Bay. I just apparently didn't do it. But a good matchup for all Green Bay wide receivers. Romeo Doubs leads the team in 14 red zone targets. Reed with 9, Watson with 8. So it's kind of even. But to me, Reed stands out for his value price of $4,200. You look at the numbers of Watson and Doubs, regardless of the stats, you just look at the numbers. Jaden Reed is either number 1 or number 2 on the team every week, putting up a lot of 10-plus DK point games. So Jaden Reed at his price point, I think, is the best. I think you could play any of the 3. One of them is going to have a really good game over 15 fantasy points. One of them's going to have under 10. But for the prices, like even Christian Watson's at a very discounted price. I like that price point. Jason I have as another value. Out of all the Seattle guys, he is the best matchup. Obviously, he doesn't get the volume that DK and Tyler Lockett get, but for his price point and the fantasy numbers, they've been very solid, right? Like his yardage as of late, I think 34 has been the lowest in like the last 5 or 6 games. He's had some games over 50 yards, and easy 10 plus DK point upside. So that's something else. Curtis Samuel, 3,600, another value that I have. Best matchup in a bad matchup game. Very cheap, but he has had a very limited role in the last 4 games. Obviously gets ejected last week, but his fantasy numbers haven't been there compared to the beginning of the year. And then last but not least, I love him and I'll continue to put him out there. Jameson Williams, 3,400 against Green Bay. Just has that downfield upside, right? One reception for 40 yards and a touchdown, right? Gets you the 11 points, and that's pretty much it. He's continuing to see more snaps every game, so it looks like they're starting to build him into the offense just a little bit more. So we'll see what that looks like in a big division game here. But that's it for wide receiver. Tight end, George Kittle, Laporta, Ferguson. I like all of them. George Kittle, 3rd best tight end PFF grade. 2nd on the team in red zone targets behind McCaffrey. 20 plus DK points in the last 3 games. It's not the greatest matchup. Seattle's played tight ends league average. But with how hot George Kittle has been on the field, it's not bad, especially for his price point, right? Laporta, 5,200, 5th best PFF tight end advantage. 20.7% of the red zone targets. Another guy with an okay matchup. Jake Ferguson, out of the 3, I probably prefer Jake Ferguson, though, at 3,900 just because of the huge discount. We're talking a $2,100 discount. 6th best PFF tight end advantage. Washington's allowed 5 touchdowns to tight ends, and Jake Ferguson ties a league-leading 17 red zone targets with Devontae Adams. Luke Musgrave is out, and then Tucker Kraft. Here's going to be an interesting one. Like I don't know if I'm wrong for really wanting to play Tucker Kraft a lot tomorrow, but he is a minimum, right? I played Pat Freiermuth last week in the main slate. 1.7 points, but he was the minimum. It allowed me to do more, right? Like I consider that my defense got 12 points at 3,000, and Tucker Kraft got me, or Freiermuth got me 1.7. So I got 13.7 out of my tight end and defense. That's not terrible, right? Especially for the price. So Luke Musgrave is out. Their other backup tight end is doubtful. 5.2 DK points last week on Detroit, allowing 12.6 DK points to tight end. So do that information as you will. There's a good chance I play him in my lineups, right? It allows me to pay up at other positions easy. And then defenses, I like paying up. I normally hate paying up, but Washington's 2nd most sacks allowed. Dallas, top 5 defense in sacks. 15.4% of Washington's drives end in a turnover. That's top 10 in the league. So a lot to like on the Dallas side. Plus their special teams. I mean, Turpin is so good. One of the best return men, if not the best return man. I think it's easy to say he's the best return man in the league. 49ers defense, 3,600. Yet again, best pass rush advantage. Seattle has a minus 84 pass block advantage. The worst in week 12. Leads the league in turnover percentage, which means they get a lot of turnovers, whether it be interception, fumble, whatever. And Geno's banged up. So that is it for this Thanksgiving slate. I hope you guys do enjoy. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. If you guys did enjoy the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And I will see you guys for tomorrow. I have a showdown video going, and I will have the final video going out for the main slate as well. So if you guys are interested, check that out, and I'll see you then.